Hello, I'm Chris Jamison,
And I'm Eugene Castillo.
and together we'll be providing a self study course for white allies who are interested to investigate their biases and better understand America's racial history.
We've been working on this project since the second week of January, and some people might want to know why we're doing this. And Chris and I have been talking about this for a while on in depth.
We noticed during the reckoning that the world had last year that there was an opportunity to address some of the long-standing resistance of white people to embrace the history of the country and ways that whiteness unfortunately causes discomfort and demeans brown and black bodies.
Hmm.
So we had the idea to maybe provide a place for white people to quote unquote learn how to do the work.
And learning how to do the work we've talked about again and again has been a sort of a hit and miss um, venture. Various people, various organizations have tried to do something along the lines of bringing awareness to what we're doing, sometimes erring on the side of inclusivity without ever really going to the roots of how we, as uh, members of society, and how we who have inherited this land that we call the United States of America got to this place in the first place, and that is to inspect the history.
Yeah, it's a cliche, but people don't understand the history; they're bound to repeat it, and that's certainly been the case here in America.
I can't help but notice I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but it always strikes me that people seem to posit a social media position that they are white allies, but in reality, it takes quite a bit of courage to do what we're asking them to do, which is to walk with us and read an historical account. We're using Professor Ronald Takaki's book, A Different Mirror: A History of Multicultural America, basically as a guide to having a common language about our history. And so, yeah, I guess I brought up two topics. One is the source material that we're going to use, but also, this other difficulty, which is why do people resist wanting to actually do the work, even though they say that they are invested in the outcome of having a non-racist country.
We were mentioning the history of our country, and part and parcel with whiteness, there's a unspoken agreement to resist conversations on race with people of color or really investigate. It's hard to decide to give up your privilege or the idea of what to be right or to be beneficial. It's not something we're commonly encouraged to do. But as we've seen, with the murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, that there exists a unfortunate and damaging thread in our country and whiteness that is literally killing people, taking people away from their families, and robbing them of their potential by white people doing this work by investigating the history of the country and seeing how they contribute and sometimes smaller whether small ways, whether that's conscious or not, that's the beginning of undoing the damage that our country has done to people of color and the birth of a better world for everyone.
It is an inconvenient truth, or actually an inconvenient history, to pick up um, Professor Takaki's book, Show and Tell Time. This is the 2008 edition, and to look at some very painful history, some painful stories, and painful realities. What's the cost of, in your opinion, of not looking at the inconvenient truth?
It will mean the loss of lives for people of color, Black, Asian, Latinos. Um, it will mean that white people won't get a chance to fully relax and be human and not be caught up in a world that demands of them to give away their ability to love and be compassionate in exchange for material wealth.
When I was a freshman in college, I was living in a predominantly white neighborhood and driving quite a distance in those days to get to class early in the morning. And the first time I was followed by a police officer in my car, it was an old beat up Buick Regal my dad gave me. And then eventually the lights went off and I was stopped, and I I was absolutely flat. I never understood for years why this police officer felt like he needed to ask why I was in the neighborhood. It was very jarring.
Yeah, I think it's important to have this type of discussions and investigations that will take place during this course because we saw, you saw in a very firsthand way, Eugene, that some officers or some persons, preconceived understanding of what you are or what Filipinos are, um, led to your harassment and feelings of disrespect and fear. And those feelings uh, did not need to have been triggered because you were simply going to school doing what every parent hopes that their child does.
Yeah. So let's talk about our project. What it does and what we don't claim it will do. I'll start with that. We're just basically parsing out the various parts. There are three main sections of Professor Takaki's book, and then a short fourth section. We're parsing it out into manageable reading sections. It's about 25, 30 pages a week. It's not a whole lot to really have a good grasp of the history of multicultural America, and how we got into this situation in the first place. We don't intend to put an end to racism just with this simple gesture itself, but it is, for me particularly, very important to know that there are more people out there in the world who care enough to want to learn about the historical roots of racism in America. And we're calling our project "The Courage to Look," and we've kind of touched a little bit about that topic, but maybe Chris, you can talk about why we named it that.
Well, our course is asking the participants to look not only at the events and rationale behind America's history with various cultures, but also to examine their own reactions to taking on this history, and that does take courage. It takes a will to do better and to feel that there's a possibility to become a better person, to be more open to other people, and try to make a small dent in the harm that our country unfortunately does to people. So, what you'll be going through will take courage, but uh, Eugene and I plan to make sure that your courage is rewarded with a safe and supportive space for you to express your feelings and also come away feeling that you've learned about yourself and that you will be better able um, to uh, stand for anti-racism, in whatever form you unfortunately encounter it.
Yeah, neither of us are expert historians or sociologists or anything of that like. And I think it's very important for white people to talk to white people, because there's this tendency in interactions between black and brown people and white people, um, that puts the black and brown person in the position of the defensiveness, having to prove his or her point. Yes, I believe that, but tell me why this is important. Why should I do this now? There's a lot of um, pushback, and this is historic. This is conditioned, and frankly, I've grown up with it and become tired of it and weary of it over the years. But the importance of white people talking to white people about the history of our country is one of the things that we've integrated into our project, that will make a more substantial change.
I think most people, learn to trust and respect the viewpoints of people like them. In this case, white people respecting the viewpoints of other white people, and people of color. At various points in our history have made very bold, very strong, rational explanations of why they feel, excuse me, why they have the same access to law, to rights, written in law. And unfortunately, white people haven't been as receptive to those very bold, thoughtful, visionary leaders. So it stands to reason that on a small scale, if white people are able to talk about race in a way that allows open discussion, but also prompts people with biases to examine them and realize the falsehood of them, that may begin to eat away at some of the entrenched biases and racism um, that's a part of whiteness.
Yeah. So this is definitely a step one type project. This isn't an end all type of venture. Chris and I are going to be walking alongside participants and doing the reading and doing the exchanges and supplemental material ourselves, and supporting each other with reminding ourselves of the history of the first Africans that were brought to Virginia, and the history of the native peoples who lived on these lands and who owned these. This was their land before we ever came here, and so it'll be difficult for us as well, to face some of these inconvenient truths. But we've also added other elements, supplementary material, to kind of lighten that. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about that, because the difficulty of doing this work, this basic historical work, doesn't have to be grim all the time. And Chris is very creative, and so we have some surprises. Maybe you can clue us in on some of those additional supplemental activities.
Yes, yeah, like Eugene said, the book, from what I've read, is it's a easy to get through, but this subject matter, of course, is very challenging. It can really make you pause and do and wonder how humans could do certain things to one another. But in order to lighten that, there's some YouTube clips of counter routines that point out some of these concepts like white privilege or racism in a very smart and clever way, a way for us to get a sense of laughter, so that we can come back and look at these, take our own courageous look at ourselves and at history with a
So let me just outline the structure of the project. We will be basically hosting a um, group gathering after the major parts of Takaki's book. So there's not a lot of Zoom commitment. Everybody's, talking about Zoom fatigue these days. The work is in reading about 25 pages to 30 pages a week, and jotting down your takeaways, and then sharing them with your white partner. And after several weeks in getting through part one, we'll have a hosted Zoom meeting where we will have some activities and discussions and so forth. And that'll continue for part two, and then part three. And there'll be a short little activity at the very, very end. We hope that this the gesture of us putting together the Courage Change project will at least get people to talk, whether they participate or not, whether they look at what we're doing beyond the first bit of material that's in the link below. We don't have any investment in that, but when people begin to talk to one another about these important issues, then I think change is possible.
Yes, on the flyer, we, Eugene very eloquently put, only and only, then and only then when people have the courage to look at, the unfortunate and tragic and, you know, horrific aspects of our nation's history towards people of color, but also at ourselves, and realize that we can individually do better, and we can take apart this history and, build a culture that includes everyone, and allows us all to be seen at the table and take advantage of our, individual and collective gifts. So we hope to be able to provide a space where, where you'll come away feeling that you've done something good for yourself, but also can help you continue this work after the course.
Yeah. So I want to make an invitation, and then Chris wants to make an invitation. My friends, if you're watching at this point in this video, if you know me or if you've heard about me and you are invested wherever you are in the world, even about looking at the roots of racism with the hope of identifying where the next steps we collectively need to embrace as a society, as a community. I would like to invite you to look at the material in our welcome page and consider joining us. And we will walk this journey along with you because I think our lives depend on it. Human life depends on it, and our future generations uh, rights and resources depend on it. So please, I welcome you to look at this material and warmly and cordially invite you to join us.
And yes, just to springboard off of what Eugene said, um, we, decided to do this because we felt it was our way of, trying to move people to start anti-racism work, just in their personal lives. Some people, march, and we decided to do this, and I hope that, while if you're my friends, I know that you're busy, and you have a lot of other commitments, but just the few hours, a week that this would ask of you, would be, worthwhile. You would be able to, um, come away a more educated person, and would be able to be that much more of an ally to people of color. Um, and you'll see jokes. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and we'll have fun. It will be a very important experience, and there'll be some tears, but there'll all be some very joyful laughter as well. And I just maybe just want to end with for me very poignant and haunting words of the late Senator John Lewis, which we remind people of in the welcome page. Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each and every one of us in every generation must do our part. So I warmly welcome you to consider if you have the courage to look. And thanks for your time.